Hi, welcome to today's Higher Perspective Show. I'm not with you live today. When I originally scheduled the um, times for these broadcasts, I didn't anticipate that I was going to be staying in Canada an extra day to teach a class on nutrition. But they asked me to stay after the Canadian National Convention and teach a class on eating right for your blood type, but also just on basic nutrition. So as you're watching this broadcast, I'm actually traveling home today. And so I've pre-recorded this message so that there'll be something, but I won't be able to answer questions today. So one of the things I normally try to do on these shows is answer questions. And so if you're typing in your questions, I'm not going to get them until I get home. Our regularly scheduled program with me live will be again in another 2 weeks. So have your questions then, or you can always email me questions. I'll try to answer questions as I can. It's very hard for me to answer all the emails I get because I get a lot of them. But that's at webinars@treelight.com. Well, so what I want to talk about today is nutrition, because that's what I teaching about in Canada. Of course, I've been working with herbal medicine and nutritional supplements and all kinds of alternative methods for many years. But I've always believed that diet, what you're eating on a regular basis, is one of the cornerstones or foundational principles of good health, along with detoxification and positive mental emotional attitude. I've always regarded herbs and supplements as things to help balance out your body when it's out of balance, but not as foundational things to keep you healthy, and not as foundational things to help you get well, especially when you're having chronic illness. You have to pay attention to what you eat. Now, I remember when I was explaining this to a friend of mine many years ago about the ABC concept, Activate, Build, Cleanse, about the mental and emotional aspect of healing, the nutritional aspect of healing, and the detoxification aspect of healing. And she says, "Oh no," she says, "all you have to do is just have a positive mental attitude, pray over your food, bless it, and raise its vibrational frequency. Your McDonald's hamburger and French fries, just bless it and elevate." I said, I don't think that quite works that way, because the body, our soul, the spirit that's alive within us, has a great deal of ability to help people. I mean, I do believe in miraculous healing and so forth, but I also think that the body is a mechanical device, a living biological machine, and it needs to replace itself. It needs to have the elements and so forth that, at least on this mortal plane of existence, to repair itself. It needs zinc, it needs copper, it needs B vitamins, it needs vitamin C. And I don't think that saying a prayer over your food magically puts all the missing nutrients into that food, nor do I think that it magically picks out all of the chemicals and everything that your body has to process. Now, I think when it comes to healing by faith and so forth, it's one thing to ask to be rescued when you didn't know any better, or you made a mistake, or you got in trouble and so forth. It's another thing to continue to go and eat poorly and expect that and eat a bunch of junk food and not take care of your body and expect it to function. I think God created the world, and I think one of the things I started off with is that God created the foods and herbs and things that we needed for our bodies to be healthy. So there's a lot of confusion about diet, because I've been involved in this pretty much full-time since the early 1980s. I started working with I started working with Edward Millett, helping his program part-time in 1980, and I went full-time into this industry in 1983, and I've been full-time in it ever since. So that's 35 years? Okay, so, and in that time I've read numerous books on diet, numerous books on nutrition, numerous books on health, a lot of different approaches. I'm very open-minded to exploring new ideas. Yeah, it doesn't mean I gullibly accept everything I read. I'm open to new ideas and then trying them out, testing them, see if they make sense, so on and so forth. So I've spent a lot of time with this, and a lot of people have dietary philosophies. They think that to be healthy you should be a vegetarian, or you should eat some kind of particular dietary philosophy that's based on eating this and not eating that and so forth. And I haven't found that to be particularly beneficial. And the reason is because, first of all, not all human beings are the same. We're all genetically a little bit different. We come from different cultures, we come from different heritages, we have different family tendencies to health and disease. And so because we have little different genetic things going on, we don't all need to eat exactly the same way. And it's not just our genetics that make us different, but also the climate in which we live and the circumstances of our life, how much stress we're under, et cetera, placing demands on our body. So what I believe is the first and most important thing about nutrition is not from books. It's not something you can get from books. It's something that you have to learn by learning to tune into your body. And over the years, I've found that myself included, and just about everybody I know, is way out of touch with their own body, with their own being, with their own inner senses. The body is designed to be healthy. It's designed to heal itself. It's also designed to instruct you as to what it needs. When you need nourishment, it makes you hungry. When you need liquids, water, it makes you thirsty. When you need rest, it makes you tired. When you need activity, it makes you restless. In other words, it sends us signals that it needs certain things. You feel the urge you need to eliminate, all of these things. The body is talking to us constantly, informing us of its needs. And a lot of the time, we're not listening. We're overriding those messages with the monkey chatter talk going on in our brain and what we've been taught to think and taught to believe, instead of tuning in to what we really need. A big example of this is most of us tend to overeat. We overeat not because our body is telling us it needs more food, but it's our mind is telling us it wants more food. The food tastes good. I have some kind of psychological, emotional need I'm looking for out of that food. Not because we actually are physically hungry. What I learned when I was a parent is if you didn't have junk food in the house, because junk food has chemicals in it that deceive your senses and deceive your body into thinking it's healthy when it's not. Include not the least of which is artificial flavorings and artificial seasonings. But if you have children and have a variety of natural foods, they'll eat until they don't feel hungry anymore, and then they'll get up and want to go play. You have to train them to ignore that. You have to train them, finish your plate, or you won't get any dessert or whatever you have to do. You have to teach them to ignore their body, to not pay attention to the fact that their body says, oh, you've had enough food, go play now, and then come back an hour later or 2 hours later and eat a little more. Which is the way animals, eat. And so your instincts get overridden. You get taught to ignore your body. You get taught not to pay attention when you're sleepy, or to sit still when you're restless and your body wants you to move. You have to be conditioned to ignore the things in your body, and we've all been conditioned to do this. So the first thing that you want to do, if you want to be able to eat healthy, is you have to get back in touch with your body. You have to get back in touch with your senses. You have to go to the grocery store and shop with your senses. You need to go and go to the produce section and look at things. Look at what looks colorful and looks interesting, what has visual eye appeal to you. Your body is tuning into the frequencies, because all nutrients and so forth have frequencies, different antioxidants or different colors. So your body is tuned in, looking for color, looking for what it needs. And the first of those tools is your eyes. And then the second one you want to use is your smell. You want to smell produce. You want to whiff it with your nose, because your nose also is a very sensitive biochemical detector. How do you think animals in the wild know what they need or what to eat? They've got senses that tell them what they need to eat. And you have to start training your senses. You have to start tuning into your senses and paying attention to what your body is telling you it needs and what it's drawing you to in the way of natural food. Okay? Because the packaging on all of the packaged and everything food, all those colors aren't really telling you about the nutritional condition of the food, but the colors in the produce section are. And so you start by training your senses that way. And you look for the produce that appeals to you, the produce that smells good to you. I've learned that when foods have more nutritional density, that is, they're producing more vitamins and minerals, they have a stronger taste, they have a stronger aroma. Many people can't tolerate that. And I believe one of the reasons why that's the case is because our bodies are very toxic. And if you start eating very high nutritionally dense food, living food, whole food, and your body's very toxic, your body will start to detoxify. You'll feel sick, and you'll think that this healthy food is making you sick. This happened to me. I remember when I decided, because I had chronic sinus problems, I wanted to change my diet, and I thought it just seemed logical that the smartest thing to do was to eat a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables and to eat whole grains instead of white flour and to avoid sugar and some basic things like that. So I went out and started just eating lots and lots of fruits and vegetables. And you know what happened? My sinuses started to run. I started coughing up mucus. I started sneezing. And I thought, why is this healthy food making me so sick? Well, it isn't. It wasn't. It was detoxifying me. It was cleaning me out. So you may have to go a little slow at first. You won't be able to tolerate a lot of natural food because it won't taste good to you, because your taste buds get seduced and perverted by eating refined and processed foods. So you have to retrain your body to be able to recognize healthy food. Do the same thing in where the meat section. You can't necessarily smell the cheeses and so forth, but you can look at animal products and dairy products and all that the same way. Look at natural foods. Look at different beans and grains and so forth, and what visually appeals to you. And I would recommend, even though I don't recommend being a total vegetarian, I would recommend buying vegetarian cookbooks. And the reason why I recommend buying vegetarian cookbooks is because regular cookbooks don't teach you how to cook vegetables. You want to learn how to prepare vegetables in a appealing and appetizing way. So what you want to do is then, when you're cooking, any good chef knows that you taste the food while you're cooking it. You smell the different seasonings. You smell the different produce. You really want to train your body to your senses to be able to recognize what's good for you and what's not. And when you eat, you should eat slowly. This is a problem I have difficulty because right now, with changes in my business, with the fact that I had to discontinue a lot of my products and I'm having to try to come up with replacements and so forth, I tend to be working and I'll sit and snack while I work, or or drink something, and I won't take time to stop and really savor what I eat. And I notice when I do this, and I get more indigestion. Whereas like when I'm out and like my wife and I had a chance to go on a cruise with NSP Canada earlier this spring, and when we were on the cruise and I was relaxed and I was talking with my wife and we were eating a meal slowly and I was just enjoying the food and I wasn't thinking about something else, I had no indigestion whatsoever. So one of the reasons I talk about these things is to remind myself, that this is true, because it's so easy to get caught up in not paying attention to your body, in not slowing down, in not tasting and enjoying the food. I remember reading in this one book, this guy says, well, I'm not going to give up my hamburgers and my French fries and that sort of thing. And he said, and this nutritionist said, you don't have to. Just, instead of eating the hamburger while you're driving around in the car and racing from one thing to another, go inside the fast food restaurant and take each bite of the hamburger and chew it slowly and savor it and enjoy it, and pay attention to your senses in your body as you're eating it. And he reports in this book, and I don't remember the title of the book now, that the guy came back 2 weeks later and said, I can't eat that crap anymore. Because this is why I'm emphasizing this. This is on the back of our blood type and nutrition charts. As actually the first step. Change the way you eat. Don't change what you eat. Change the way you eat. The way you approach food. Use your senses, use your body, pay attention to how you feel. Notice how you feel after you eat something. I figured out that I had a gluten sensitivity, which I had grown up eating sprouted grain bread and whole wheat bread and for many, many years, and I didn't seem to have a problem. And then all of a sudden I started having a problem. I didn't realize I was having a problem with grain, and I think it has to do with the glycophosphates and the changes that have been made in the grains. The fact that I was eating non-organic corn, and almost all that corn is genetically modified and loaded with glycophosphates, and they disrupt your friendly intestinal bacteria. So it kind of crept up on me over time. But I was having itchy ears, itchy skin, having a lot of digestive upset, and so I started tuning in to it and noticing what I ate and when I ate certain things, did it get worse or did it get better? And I finally figured out that after I ate a lot of grain, bread, wheat, gluten stuff, that my skin would itch more, my ears would itch more, I'd have more mucus production and so forth. And so I experimented. I eliminated all gluten. And then I noticed that my skin didn't itch, my ears didn't itch, my sinuses were better. And so then I tried introducing some whole grain bread back in. It didn't seem to immediately take effect. Within a couple of days, it was all back. And I did this several times. So I realized, without somebody diagnosing me, without somebody telling me, that I was having a problem with the gluten, with the wheat. And so I started eliminating it from my diet. I can eat a little bit once in a while, but it really causes me problems because I think some of that genetically modified stuff and glycophosphates and everything kind of messed up my friendly flora a little bit, and I'm still trying to get it rebalanced. So once you start approaching food with that kind of thoughtfulness, right, so that your own inner nutritionist, your own body can start talking to you, you want to concentrate on eating the best quality food you can. And that means you want to actually look for real food. I've read books with arguments about every kind of real food there is. All dairy is bad, all meat is bad, all, this, you should never eat this vegetable, or on and on and on, okay? And a lot of that, I think, comes from the next thing we're going to talk about, which is, the fact that you're going to have certain things that your body doesn't do very well with just because of your genetics and your life circumstances. And so people tend to, find a diet that works for them, and then they generalize that this is going to work for everybody. And that's kind of a natural human tendency, but I found that isn't true. The old saying, one man's meat is another man's poison. So you start. So what you want to do first is just get rid of the chemical additives. Start reading labels, and when you see all those, chemical additives, preservatives, food, artificial colorings, artificial flavorings, and so forth, stop eating that. Okay, start eating food that's actually just real food, and buy the best quality food you can afford. Maybe you can't afford to go buy the organic food because it's more expensive. Maybe you're on a tight budget and you've got to shop at Walmart. Well, at least keep. At least try to get the best stuff that you can find and the best stuff you can afford. My wife, got food from food banks for a while, and apparently at the food bank, because I've never been to a food bank, there is quite a bit of organic food that gets donated, quite a bit of produce that gets donated, as well as a lot of junk food that gets donated. Just search out and find the best stuff you can find, because you don't want to worry about it. You just want to look for the best food you can find. So first, get rid of, start eliminating chemical additives. Second, start eliminating refined carbohydrates. Get the sugar out of the diet. Get the white flour out of the diet. The GMO corn out of the diet, and so forth, and try to get as natural food as you can. And also the same thing with oils. Get rid of the processed oils, shortening, margarine, that kind of thing, and eat real fats, olive oil, avocados, whatever, and try to eat natural sugars, honey, sucanat, freeze-dried sugarcane juice, maybe I use a little xylitol to sweeten things. I don't want the strong taste of things, but as you actually move this way, you find that you'll want less and less carbohydrates, because if you eat a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables, you'll get the carbohydrates you need with the vitamins and minerals you need to process them properly into energy. Well, that leads into the next stage of this. So you're changing the way you approach food. You want to approach food as taking the time to enjoy it, shopping with your senses, listening to your body, and then you want to start eliminating the more obvious things that aren't really natural food. Chemicals, refined and processed foods, and so forth. And then you want to, from there, you may notice that you'll need to adjust your diet for your genetics and for your life situation. And I think a good place to do that is the blood type diet. Now, I know the blood type diet is controversy. When I advertised I was going to do a class on it, someone said, "Why are you promoting something that's unscientific and debunked?" Well, I've never thought of the blood type diet as set in stone, religious. This is the way it is. Everything that's an avoid you got to get rid of, and everything's a beneficial. You got to eat that. I mean, I've never thought of it that way. What I read is Peter Damo's "Live Right for Your Type," and I realized that there are certain tendencies that people with different blood types have, as far as genetic tendencies to different kinds of diseases, different kinds of health problems. A lot of that's caught up in how well they digest, how they handle stress, how their immune system functions in the different blood types. And there are some differences in this. There's even some tendencies to personality differences based on blood type. And I've observed this to be generally quite accurate. And so when I see something in real life is accurate, I don't care if somebody did a study in which they put people who were chronically ill onto the blood type diet, and they all got better, but it was attributed to the fact that they were eliminating foods that are problematic for a lot of people anyway. Well, yeah, sure. I mean, any time someone is going to improve their diet in any kind of way, it's going to be generally helpful. And so the idea is, of course, that the blood type diet isn't all that reliable. But I do think that if you go deeper into it and you look at some of the tendencies that these blood types have, then you understand a little bit more about why there is some differences in what foods they tend to be able to tolerate and what foods they don't. And one of the things is you don't have to avoid all avoids. You just have to minimize them as not being a large part of your diet. So, for example, I'm an A blood type, and some of the things I've learned about A blood types are one is that A blood types tend to run deficient in hydrochloric acid and digestive enzymes. So we don't have as strong a digestive system as some of the other blood types, particularly O's. O's have tendency to have very good digestion. So O's can tolerate eating a lot of protein, whereas A blood types have a harder time digesting protein and may have a harder time digesting particularly red meat, and therefore may tend more towards, naturally towards fish. I mean, this is something I had learned before I read the blood type diet about me, that I couldn't handle eating a whole bunch of red meat. I still never am attracted to steak or prime rib or any of that kind of thing. I'll occasionally have some ground beef, or I'll have a soup with red meat in it, but I just am not a big fan of red meat. And I found just my own experimentation, I did better with poultry and with fish than red meat. Also, A blood types have a tendency to have their stress ramp up, meaning that they don't break down cortisol and stress hormones very efficiently. So when we're exposed to a series of repeated events, we can get really nervous and anxious. And when I read that, I was really relieved, because I'd really struggled with that my whole life, and I realized, okay, that's kind of a genetic tendency I have. I have to eat in a way and maybe use some supplements in a way to try to help manage that. And that's one of the things that you'll learn. This is also true of what I've studied iridology. You have a tendency to have certain strengths and weaknesses, and that's where I think the supplementation and the herbs really can come in, is to help balance out your body. So I think a good place to start to see what kinds of foods might be causing your symptoms is the blood type diet. I don't think you should religiously follow it. I think you should pay attention to your body above all. But I think that, for example, A blood types eliminating red meat and some of the other vegetables that are problematic for them and so forth, and seeing how they feel is a good place to do, as well as looking at some of the tendencies of that their blood type, and maybe taking some supplements to help balance that. Conversely, I've seen a lot of O blood types who are struggling with their mental emotional outlet, and they tend to burn through stress hormones quite rapidly, which means that they need higher concentrations of the amino acid precursors like tyrosine and D-L-phenylalanine to epinephrine, dopamine, and so forth, or they can have mood swings. And I have, based on that idea, I've counseled a number of O blood types to eat red meat for breakfast, and they've told me that when they eat red meat for breakfast, have like steak and eggs for breakfast, they're more stable through the day. Their energy's more stable. They feel better through the day. I've had some vegetarians who were O blood types who, of course, didn't want to eat red meat, and I suggested they add a tyrosine supplement, and that's helped. So you want to, after you have done the basics, you want to look at your blood type and common allergenic foods, and see if you can eliminate any foods that might be problematic for you, or see if there are any foods or herbs or supplements that can help to balance out your basic genetics. And that's where you get into where the dietary things diverge a little bit. Another thing that I think, and if you're interested in learning more about that, we have these blood type, pH, and nutrition charts, which list which foods are beneficial, neutral, and avoid for each blood type. This is the A blood type chart. And on the back is the basic information of what I'm talking about right now, including this thing over here, the blood type characteristics, the strengths, the weaknesses, some of the kinds of supplements that benefit them. That's really, really useful information. Now, before I move on, there's a couple of other special things. And these are more temporary things for special kind of eliminating things that may be sensitive for people. I decided in this edition of the charts to include, there's a little symbol on the front that indicates if the food is high in FODMAPs. FODMAPs are fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. In other words, there are things that feed bacteria in your gut, and if you have dysbiosis, intestinal dysbiosis, you may find you get a lot of belching, bloating, gas, you've got a lot of digestive upset and so forth. And if for a period of time you eliminate foods that are high in FODMAPs, like bananas, for example, are horrible for me. I eat bananas and I bloat like crazy. They're a high FODMAP food. And that's because of the dysbiosis I developed, because I'm pretty sure because I was eating non-organic wheat and corn for a while. But anyway, you also would, along with that, want to take something to kind of knock down the unfriendly bacteria, get that under control. I think berberine is a good thing. The new cinnamon balance formula in Nature Sunshine that helped create, which helps balance out your blood sugar, is also helpful. If you can get enteric coated peppermint oil, that's another one that's helpful. All of the, and as well as if you are, especially if you're an A blood type and possibly AB blood type, you may want to take a hydrochloric acid supplement. You might need a hydrochloric acid supplement if you're another blood type, but you I bet 80% if you're A that you need it. And that will help to knock down the unfriendly bacteria, help to, you follow that up with probiotics, and then you can probably tolerate eating some of the FODMAP foods, but you may need to correct your gut dysbiosis, eliminate FODMAP foods for a while. Another one is salicylates. Salicylates are your natural aspirin compounds, which are found in foods. Now, I had heard of this and I'd never really looked into it, but I found some information about it, and what it is that we used to, as human beings, go out and pick fruits and vegetables, but particularly fruits, and we would pick them when they got ripe, which means their sugars fully developed. But now a lot of fruits and vegetables are picked slightly green before they're fully ripe. They're maybe ripened in gassing chambers or whatever, but they have higher levels of salicylates. And apparently that higher level of salicylates coupled with food additives and preservatives is one of the things that tends to make people nervous and hyperactive and so forth. So if you've got kids that are irritable and restless and having learning problems and difficulty focusing, you may have to also eliminate foods high in salicylates, as well as all the foods with the chemical additives, in order to get their body to balance out. Some people also who are sensitive to salicylates will also develop things like sinus problems and rashes and irritable bowel. So on our charts, we also listed foods that are high in salicylates for people who need to have also that particular dietary correction. Now moving on, pH. pH is less to do about disease as it is about high energy. High energy. Your body is running on electrical current, and as I mentioned in my last higher perspective about the work of Jerry Tennant, Healing This Voltage, the body is supposed to run on a pH of about 7.4, which is a electrical potential of negative 25 millivolts. That basically runs through the electrical system of your body, known as your meridians, and also is electrical potential within the cells. So as your pH becomes increasingly acidic, you have, I forgot to turn off my phone. You lose energy because you lose electrical potential. So we talk about pH and diet. There's a lot of things that affect pH, but the diet in pH has to do with eating food that has high energy. So there's a little bit of confusion on this. We listed in our charts foods that are traditionally considered acid forming and foods that are considered alkalizing. And pretty much if you eat a lot of meat and a lot of grains and legumes, you're going to run a higher acidity. Those foods do not provide the same kind of life energy as eating fruits and vegetables. But even in eating fruits and vegetables, the fresher the fruits and vegetables, the less time there has been from the time that they've been picked to the time that you're eating them, the higher the electrical potential in the food and the more energy you're going to derive from it, which is why having a garden and eat, like I did this morning, eating some melon right out of your own garden is really fun, because the average time produce is in the grocery store, average time it takes produce to get from the farm to the grocery store is about 2 weeks. So I've observed, for example, if I pick a bell pepper from the garden, there's a really strong aroma, there's this really, really nice bell pepper taste, and if I put it in the fridge and I wait 2 weeks, it tastes like a pepper from the grocery store. So you start to, as if you have the capability, especially in the summer, to shop at farmers markets or other places where you're getting stuff that's really freshly picked and you're eating it raw or maybe just slightly cooked, a little bit steamed or something like that, you're getting more electrical potential, more alkalinity that is going to give you a higher level of energy. So the more you can eat fresh food and food that hasn't been like cooked to death. You know, we say that, we have that expression, it's been cooked to death. It's cooked so much that it's killed the life in it. You don't want to cook your food to death. You want to, some foods do need to be cooked. I don't think everything needs to be eaten raw, but just lightly steaming some broccoli or lightly sauteing some zucchini or whatever, you still have a high alkalinity and it's still giving you a lot of energy for your body. But what you can eat raw and what you can eat fresh, eat fresh. It's going to really help. Of course, on top of that, there's minerals, there's breathing deeply, and everything is going to, all these things that are going to get more electrical energy into your body. Now, the last thing I want to talk about in nutrition and diet is about the need to balance caloric intake. Now, that's going to happen pretty automatically if you are paying attention to how you eat and, you know, searching for quality food. But this comes from the Zone Diet books by Barry Sears. The idea that you roughly need equivalent calories from fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. There are some slight differences, I think, in the blood types. O blood types and B blood types need a little bit higher protein level. A's and ABs need a little bit lower protein level. But still, roughly a third of your diet, your caloric intake, should be from protein, about a third from fats, and about a third from carbohydrates. But that carbohydrate should primarily be fruits and vegetables. So it's the idea that if you divide your plate in thirds, 2/3 of your plate should be what are called low glycemic fruits and vegetables. These are fruits and vegetables that don't have a lot of starch and sugar in them. So high sugar fruits and high starch foods like potatoes and grains and so forth are high glycemic carbohydrates. They're going to trigger more insulin production, which is going to trigger your body to store fat. Now, if you think about it, okay, in the spring, if we were following the natural cycle of the seasons, in the spring, what you come up are young greens, you know, lettuce and radishes and beet greens and different things. There isn't a lot of heavy starchy foods in the spring. That's because those foods are cleaning out your body from winter. It's sort of a spring cleaning that's taking place and preparing your body for summer. The more sugary fruits and things and other vegetables start maturing in the summer when there's abundance of them. And then as you move towards fall is when you get the really foods that have a lot of starch in them, the potatoes, the grain, all that matures because this is right before winter. So animals and people would typically load up on those foods. They would gain some pounds to help them go through the winter. when there's less food, less fresh food. Plus, those starchy foods also store better. So you can store the grain over the winter, you can store the potatoes over the winter, you can eat them through the winter. Of course, in the winter, you need to burn more calories to keep warm, so the high starchy foods work well in the winter, as well as people would tend to eat more animal proteins and animal fat in the winter, and so forth. So there's a kind of a seasonal cyclic nature to this. Well, we're eating these high starchy foods that are tend towards insulin production and storing fat for winter. We're eating them all year round, which is one of the reasons why it's hard for us sometimes to lose weight, and we have to reset our metabolism. So if you use the principle of zoning your plate, a little bit of fat, because fat is very dense calorically, so a little bit of olive oil and vinegar dressing on your salad, or a little bit of butter on your broccoli or whatever adds a little bit of fat, which is giving you the calories from fat. And then you have your little piece of protein source, whatever, and you're eating mostly what are called low glycemic fruits and vegetables that don't have a lot of starch or sugar in them. Then it's going to help balance out your metabolism so that you actually are burning fat rather than storing fat. And that also tends to help with your energy. So that's another thing that we do on the chart is we put this on the new one with a little plate, and it shows you whether it's a fat, a protein, or carbohydrate, and then the high glycemic carbohydrates are in brown, and the low glycemic carbohydrates are in green. So if you're eating brown carbohydrates, you need a much smaller portion of them in order to balance out your caloric intake. But it's a good practice, and I know when I eat a little bit of protein, the fish or chicken or whatever, with lots of vegetables and salad greens, and especially if it's like a raw salad, a lot of things, I feel really good. It digests well, whatever. Eating a heavy grain with protein is more acidifying. It also is creating more of a glycemic load, which causes you to gain weight. And so if you want to lose weight, you've got to kind of balance out your metabolism by balancing your intake from those different food groups. So that's why we created these charts. These charts are blood type patient nutrition charts. We're going to, this is the new one we have. We're going to sell this edition out and come out with another one where we're going to go back to dividing the foods by category. Right, this is all, the foods are all alphabetized. We're going to go back to putting the meats together, the fishes together, that sort of thing, so that people can look at it and say, okay, what am I going to choose for a protein source? What am I going to choose for a carbohydrate source? What am I going to choose for my fat? But I put these charts together because I believe diet is so foundational to good health. And these are the basic principles I've learned over the years of good diet and nutrition. I think they're all accurate, but I think above all, you have to customize this to yourself by learning to pay attention to your own body. I don't think you should eat from a nutrition book. I think you should eat from the inner nutritionist that God put into your body that tells you what to eat. And if you avoid the foods that trick your senses and fake you out and so forth, and eat the natural foods, you'll find actually it's probably pretty easy to do this. I know when I get away from the sugar and I get away from the junk food and so forth for a period of time, I crave fresh fruits and vegetables. I love good, healthy, natural food. I enjoy the flavors and so forth of food. When you eat the junk food, it numbs your senses, it numbs your taste buds. You get to the point where the only thing you can taste is saltiness, sweetness, and kind of the shortening margarine fat kind of thing. You lose the subtlety of your taste buds, and you are less able to use this inner nutritionist to tell you what to eat. I think this is the equivalent of dumbing people down educationally so that they can't think logically. I think this, in a nutritional sense, is dumbing down their body so they can't tune in to what their body needs and know how to take care of their body, which I think is a natural, God-given right of every human being. And I believe that, that everybody, I wish we could educate everybody about nutrition. I wish we could get better education about nutrition in schools. I wish that we could, change the whole structure of what's going on in our society, because right now we're subsidizing the production of genetically modified corn and other crops, which is making that food cheap and plentiful and easy to get for people. We're making junk food, we're subsidizing junk food to make junk food cheap and plentiful and easy for people, and we're charging organic farmers extra money to certify their farms, so we're making the cost of healthy food higher. And this is all a political thing, and I think it needs to change. We need to get back to where there's more locally grown food, where we're encouraging more natural organic production and less commercial agrotech business and farming. And I all of this is something that we need to work towards collectively. But you have to start by, first of all, being aware of this and making these changes in your own life. I want to again address this to people who may be struggling financially. I remember when I was married many years ago, right at the birth of my first child. I had just graduated from college and was having a hard time finding a job I wanted. I had originally intended to go on and get a master's degree, and my wife was adamantly opposed to it, and so I wound up quitting school before I was really totally into the profession I wanted, and I was having a hard time finding the job I wanted. So I was working at a Target store. And I was definitely not making quite enough to take care of the family, my young family. So I actually got assistance from my church. But a lot of that assistance was like white flour, white sugar, canned fruit, canned vegetables, but it was what we had. When Christmas came around and I got hired on the night shift which was overtime, because we came in when the store closed at 10, and then we were let out of the building when the people came in at 8 o'clock in the morning. We were locked in, so we were in there for 10 hours. So it was 2 hours overtime every night, plus a little bit extra because it was a nighttime shift. And so that month I made a lot of money. And one of the first things I did is I went to the supermarket and I bought fresh fruits and vegetables. I started eating them. And I can tell you, I remember how much clearer my brain was and how much better I felt when I ate that. And I realized from that point on, I was going to make sure that I made high quality food a priority in my life, because I realized that if I didn't make high quality food a priority in my life, that I wouldn't have the mental clarity and the energy to be able to be successful. In order for me to be financially successful, in order for me to be good at what I was doing, in order for me to have a clear brain and a healthy body, I had to make purchasing and eating healthy food a priority. And I have done that ever since then. And so I hope that you've enjoyed this message. Like I said, I can't answer questions today because this is a pre-recorded message. My son David is playing this. I will, when I have a chance, look at the transcript of the comments and see what comments people made, and maybe address some questions that people ask on a later edition. But I just wanted to have this recording so that we could deliver my message. I'll be back again live in 2 weeks. So thank you for tuning in to The Higher Perspective, and good day.